A piece of gold. Salience bias.
The forest breathed its damp breath onto their faces. Every broad leaf pushed aside dripped dew from the previous night's rain onto their felt clothes. 4 shadows moved in silence, 4 Iranian soldiers deep in the forests of Gilan, where the fog made enemies look like friends, and friends like enemies. Kaveh, the group's commander, walked ahead, lines of insomnia and anxiety etched around his eyes. Behind him was Borzu, with broad shoulders that seemed built to carry a mountain. Then came Rostam, the youngest member, his eyes still gleaming with the excitement of war. And finally, Sohrab, a man who listened to the surroundings more than he looked ahead. Their mission was simple and deadly, reconnaissance of the number and equipment of a new Russian outpost that had sprouted like a festering boil a few kilometers ahead of the main line. The order was explicit: just look, do not engage, return. After 2 hours of trekking through the mud, they heard them, the sound of laughter and speech in a foreign tongue. Kaveh signaled with his hand, and all 4 took cover behind a cluster of giant ferns. Through the foliage, the outpost was visible. A few tents, a dying fire feeding thick smoke into the fog, and about 20 Russian soldiers, weary and careless, eating or cleaning their weapons. Rostam whispered excitedly, 20 men, 22, we can take them. Kaveh glared at him with fury. Quiet! And then they saw him. From the command tent emerged a man who looked nothing like the others. Tall, with polished leather boots reaching his knees, and a gray coat with a fur collar. But that wasn't what caught the eye. What shone in that gray fog, amidst all the dirty and dusty uniforms, were the golden epaulets on his shoulders, a piece of pure, arrogant gold that flashed with the man's every move. The Russian officer calmly lit a cigar and stared at a map spread over a wooden table. Those epaulets, that piece of gold, seemed to gather all the forest's light into itself. A perfect target, a complete symbol of everything they hated: invasion and the alien presence in the heart of their homeland. Rostam said in a voice he could barely control, "Commander, that's him, their commander. If we hit him, the whole outpost will be paralyzed." Kaveh couldn't take his eyes off those epaulets. All logic, all orders faded before that tempting shine. Striking that officer wasn't just a military victory, it was a spiritual one, a hard slap in the enemy's face.
Sohrab, however, was looking elsewhere. He stared at the perimeter of the outpost. In a very low voice, he said, "Kaveh, look over there, atop that small hill, between the 2 pine trees. Something is camouflaged. It looks like a Maxim machine gun." Kaveh and Borzo's gaze turned for a moment to where Sohrab pointed. Nothing was visible, just a mass of branches and leaves, maybe a shadow, maybe just imagination. But those golden epaulets were not imagination. They were real. They were brilliant. They stood there right now, sneering at them. Borzu growled, "Sohrab, this is no time for fear. Look at that officer. If he escapes, we lose this chance." Kaveh was trapped in limbo. The voice of logic in his head said, "The mission is reconnaissance. The danger of the machine gun is unknown." But his eyes said, "The target is there, shining and accessible. Strike and make history." The brilliant, clear image of the officer overpowered the faint, indistinct shadow of a potential danger. The prominence, the salience, of that golden target pushed all other risks to the margins. Kaveh made his decision. "Rostam, you're the best shot. Target, the golden epaulets. Borzu, ready for support. Sohrab, watch our rear. We retreat immediately after the shot." Sohrab wanted to say something, but Kaveh's determined look sealed his mouth. Rostam lay on the ground. He held his breath. The world shrank in his eyes. The whole forest, the whole fog, all fears, condensed into one golden point. The sound of the shot tore the silence of the forest. The Russian officer fell onto the table like a puppet with cut strings. For a second, absolute silence reigned. A second of pride, a second of victory. And then hell opened its mouth. The sound Sohrab had feared erupted from the top of the hill, a sound like tearing thick canvas, but 1,000 times louder and deadlier. The Maxim machine gun began to rain down fire. Bullets mowed down branches and leaves, splitting tree trunks. Simultaneously, the Russian soldiers, snapping out of their initial shock, began firing from all sides. That careless and weary outpost was a trap, and that officer with the golden epaulets was the shining bait in its heart. Back! Back! Kave's scream was lost amidst the gunfire.
It wasn't a retreat, it was a rout. Borzu shielded the others with his chest to give them a chance to flee, and fell right there. Rostam, the excited youth, took a bullet to the leg and dragged himself along the ground. Kava and Sorhab pulled him behind them under a rain of fire. Hours later, when the sound of shooting faded in the distance, two exhausted and wounded men laid the body of their young friend on the ground. Kava stared at an unknown point in the fog. He was no longer thinking of victory. He wasn't thinking of his failed mission either. He was thinking only of that piece of gold in the fog, of that deceptive shine that had blinded his eyes. He had stared so hard at that brilliant spot that he had forgotten that real danger always lurks in the gray, insignificant shadows. Those golden epaulets still shone in his mind, but this time not with the color of pride, but with the color of his friend's blood. In daily life, we often see the salience effect, paying excessive attention to one item while neglecting others. Sometimes a book is bought just for its cover, even if the content is uninteresting, or a speaker is accepted for their eloquence and skill, even if their message is weak. To counter this effect, we must evaluate events objectively and know exactly what we are looking for in every situation.
Thank you for listening to us. If you enjoyed it, please support us by liking and subscribing.